This is Whisper from History, where forgotten voices rise again. Imagine, just one man, and an entire plane under his control. A calm face, yet eyes hiding a single, chilling secret. It was the stormy night of 1971 when D.B. Cooper carried out America's most daring hijacking, and then vanished into the sky, as if he never existed at all. If you missed our 32-episode Season 1, Dark History, watch the full playlist on our channel. It was November 24th, 1971, Thanksgiving Eve. At Portland International Airport, the world looked ordinary. Passengers shuffled through the cold northwest air, their coats heavy with rain. The hum of jet engines mixed with the faint chatter of travelers returning home for the holiday. But one man stood out. He wore a dark suit, a neatly pressed white shirt, and a black tie. A businessman, perhaps, or someone pretending to be one. He carried a single black attached case, and his ticket read, Dan Cooper, Flight 305, Northwest Orient Airlines, bound for Seattle. He paid in cash. No one knew then that within the next few hours, this calm, polite passenger would become one of the most legendary mysteries in American history, a man who would vanish from the sky and leave behind only questions. At 2:50 p.m., Flight 305 lifted off from Portland, with 36 passengers and 6 crew members aboard. The Boeing 727 cut through low gray clouds as rain streaked across its windows. Cooper took seat 18C near the rear, quiet, facing the aisle. He ordered a bourbon and soda. Then, as the plane reached altitude, he calmly handed a folded note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. At first, she slipped it into her pocket, thinking it was just another man flirting mid-flight. But Cooper leaned closer and whispered, almost gently, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner froze. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. The note said he had a bomb in his briefcase, and he wanted her to sit beside him. When she did, Cooper opened the case slightly. Inside, she saw 8 red cylinders, wires, and a large battery, whether real or not. It looked deadly enough. He was calm, not angry, not nervous, just in control. "I want $200,000, he said quietly, "in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 primary, to reserve, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel when we land. No panic, no shouting, just firm, business-like instructions." The captain, William Scott, radioed air traffic control. Within minutes, word reached the FBI. The flight continued toward Seattle, circling above Puget Sound for nearly 2 hours as law enforcement scrambled to gather the money in parachutes. Down below, the world was changing fast. Banks were contacted, cash was collected, and agents marked every bill's serial number. By 5:30 p.m., the ransom was ready, $200,000 in used 20s, stuffed into a canvas bag. Meanwhile, Cooper remained calm. He refused food. He smoked Raleigh cigarettes, sipping bourbon, occasionally chatting with the crew. When asked if he had a grudge against Northwest Airlines, he smiled and said, "I don't have a grudge against your airline, miss. I just have a grudge." No one could tell what he meant. Outside, night was falling. Rain lashed against the wings as the plane descended toward Seattle-Tacoma Airport. At 5:45 p.m., the jet landed. The runway was surrounded by emergency vehicles, their red lights flashing through the storm. But Cooper had warned them. No tricks, no delays. He kept the cabin dark, the shades drawn. He ordered the pilot to park the plane far from the main terminal, the engine still running. Moments later, a Northwest employee approached with the cash and parachutes. Cooper allowed the exchange, but refused to let any law enforcement approach the plane. Only after confirming the ransom did he release the 36 passengers unharmed. But he kept 4 crew members, pilot William Scott, co-pilot William Radachak, flight engineer Harold Anderson, and flight attendant Tina. As the passengers walked away into the storm, they left behind the man who was about to disappear forever. Cooper's next instructions were strange. He demanded the plane take off again, this time heading south toward Mexico City, but he insisted on very specific flight conditions. The Boeing 727 had to fly under 10,000 feet, at a speed of no more than 200 miles per hour, and with landing gear down. The cabin lights were off, the rear staircase partially lowered. It was an impossible set of demands unless you were planning something extraordinary. At 7:40 p.m. Flight 305 lifted off once more, climbing into the cold, rain-filled darkness. Cooper sat near the back parachutes beside him, bag of money secured with a rope around his waist. He ordered the crew into the cockpit and told them to close the curtain behind them. A few minutes later, a warning light flashed. The rear staircase had been opened. The pilot asked over the intercom, "Everything okay back there?" Cooper's reply came calm and firm, "No problems." And then silence. Somewhere between 8:10 and 8:13 p.m., as the plane crossed the forests of Southwest Washington through wind, rain, and darkness, the altimeter shifted slightly. The aircraft suddenly lifted, as if something or someone had left its weight behind. The crew looked at each other in disbelief. D.B. Cooper had jumped. When the plane landed in Reno hours later, the rear stairs were still down, the bomb was gone. The money was gone, and so was Cooper. FBI agents swarmed the aircraft, searching every inch. No fingerprints on the note, no usable prints on the seat, no trace of the parachutes. Only a black tie, a clip, and 8 Raleigh cigarette butts. The man had simply vanished. For decades, investigators searched the forests, rivers and valleys of southwest Washington and Oregon. They found nothing, no parachute, no body, no money. Until 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand along the Columbia River near Tennebar, about 20 miles from where Cooper supposedly jumped. He found $5,800 in $20 bills, bundled in rotting rubber bands. The serial numbers matched the ransom money, but the mystery deepened. The cash was buried, decayed, yet strangely out of place. Had it washed downriver been planted? No one knew. The rest of the $200,000 was never seen again. As years passed, the story grew. Every few years, a new theory surfaced, and some of them went far beyond the realm of reason. Because what if D.B. Cooper didn't die that night? What if he wasn't even entirely human? One theory claims that Cooper survived the fall, not through luck, but through knowledge beyond ordinary human limits. Eyewitnesses described him as eerily calm, too calm for someone risking a jump into a storm at night, at 10,000 feet, with freezing winds and zero visibility. Some believe he was a former paratrooper, perhaps from Vietnam or World War II, but others whisper of something stranger. They say he knew something about the sky that no man should know. Over the years, strange stories began to surface. In 1972, just months after the hijacking, several hikers near Mount St. Helens reported hearing a man shouting for help in the wilderness, followed by the sound of engines that didn't belong to any aircraft known at the time. In 1978, a deer hunter found a placard from a Boeing 727 in a remote forest area, miles from Cooper's suspected jump zone. Some say it was debris from Flight 35. Others believe it was something else entirely, evidence that the plane may have flown through something not yet understood, because on radar that night, there were unexplained blips, lights that followed the aircraft briefly before disappearing. The FAA dismissed them as atmospheric interference, but some radar operators insisted the signals were real objects, moving faster than any known aircraft of the era. Then came the witnesses. In the 1980s, reports surfaced of a man fitting Cooper's description: older, quieter, living under an alias in small towns across the Pacific Northwest. One woman claimed he confessed to being Cooper on his deathbed, saying only, "I never meant to vanish. But something in that storm helped me." What did he mean by something? By the 1990s, the story had split into two paths, one grounded in reality, one drifting toward the paranormal. The rational theory says Cooper jumped into the storm, was killed on impact, or lost in the wilderness, and his remains were never found. But the other theory, the one that refuses to die, tells of a man who slipped through time, through a storm that wasn't just thunder and rain, but a gateway. Pilots that night described electrical static unlike any storm they'd seen. Strange compass interference, flickering lights across the horizon. Could it be that D.B. Cooper didn't simply fall but crossed into something else? A former radar technician named Larry Fine once told reporters that during the time of Cooper's jump, radar screens at McCord Air Force Base glitched for exactly 3 minutes. When systems returned, the object Flight 305 appeared briefly 200 miles off its trajectory, then snapped back into position. No official report exists, but several retired airmen later confirmed they saw something unusual that night. Some paranormal researchers point to a chilling coincidence. November 24th, the day Cooper vanished, falls exactly on the anniversary of a 1947 military test flight where another pilot disappeared over Washington under mysterious radar anomalies. His name? Major Thomas Cooper. No relation, officially. But to those who believe in patterns, that name was no accident. Even today, FBI files remain inconclusive. The case officially closed in 2016, unsolved. But the story refuses to rest. In bars and logging towns, people still tell of seeing a man with sharp eyes and an old black suit, walking alone near the Columbia River whenever storms roll in. Sometimes he disappears into the mist. Sometimes they say he talks about flying. And sometimes if you stand near the riverbank at night, when the wind is right, you can still hear the faint echo of engines and a voice carried through the rain. "I'll be seeing you." What happened to D.B. Cooper that stormy night remains one of America's most enduring enigmas. A man who fell from the sky, or perhaps into it, a hijacker, or something else entirely. The truth lies somewhere between the clouds and the unknown, where thunder hides secrets, and one man's name still haunts the wind. D.B. Cooper, the man who vanished into the storm. They say, maybe he died, or maybe he slipped into another world entirely. But whenever lightning flashes across the sky, people swear they can still hear a voice in the wind. "I'll be seeing you."